Good afternoon, LEC community. Thanks so much for being with us for today's special event, our Afro-Latinx Educator panel. My name is 𝗖𝗿𝗍𝘀𝘀𝗺. I am the Deputy Director of the Latinx Education Collaborative. I am so excited to be hosting some amazing educators today to celebrate Black History Month and to, kind of get us more in the know about Afro-Latinidad and how it shows up in schools and in their classrooms. Our mission at the Latinx Education Collaborative is to increase Latino representation in K-12 classrooms. We hope all the time to show up with our 5 values of authenticity, community, impact, integrity, and personal growth. Today, be on the lookout for those values as they show up. We have shifted some of our language this year because we realize how important home, heart, and humanity is for schools. We are here to support and and foster a home made up of Latinx educators. We hope to inspire the hearts of Latino students to consider education as a career, and we want Latino heritage and humanity to be honored in schools, and so we are doing some of that work as well. Like I said earlier, I am so excited to turn it over to our Afro-Latinx Educator panel. We have an amazing moderator with us, 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗺, and some amazing teachers as well. So Noemi, take it on.
Thank you, Susana. Good evening, everyone on the Midwest and East Coast, and good afternoon to everybody who's joining us from the West Coast and beyond. It is good to be here. My name is 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗺, and as Susana mentioned, I am a 20-plus year educator and advocate for Latinx youth, both in Arizona and here in my home city of Chicago. I am excited to moderate today's panel, so let's just bring them in because that's who you all really want to see anyway. Hello. These are the people right here doing all the real hard work with our babies today, right? Y'all actually just finished working with the kiddos. And I don't know, I think Alfredo, you're still working with kiddos, if I'm not mistaken. So we are so excited to have y'all here and to share your stories today. Before we jump into any questions or any talking about purpose or anything like that, can y'all just tell people who you are, who your people are, what your name is, where you teach? Just tell us a little bit about yourself. And we'll start with Angie, and then we'll just go from Angie around.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗺 Mosquera. I'm from Colombia. My people are from Colombia. I teach in Guadalupe Center's high school. I'm the Spanish teacher.
And Genesis, if you want to jump in.
Good evening, everyone. I am Genesis Rosales. I am a Spanish teacher at Baltimore Design School. And my family is from Honduras. And I currently live in Baltimore.
My name is Alfredo Crossman Chavez Jr. I am the 5th grade and 8th grade PE teacher here at 𝗘𝗱𝑒𝑑𝑒 Academy. Also, founding athletic director here at 𝗘𝗱𝑒𝑑𝑒 Academy. My father is born and raised in Colón, Panama. So shout out to Panama. And my family is from New York. So, East Coast.
Nice, nice. I actually forgot to say I'm Puerto Rican. I usually tell people that off top. That's like the first thing I say to people. So I don't know where my head was at. Mira, Boricua's in the house, if there are any out there. So today, what we're really trying to do, as Susana has already mentioned, we're really just trying to shed some light on a topic that, at least, I don't know about y'all, but from my own experience, just hasn't really been part of the conversation. Probably because we are here in the United States, and like that obviously plays a role in how things happen when it comes to figuring out how we identify. But I want us to really center this idea that today is about us sharing our stories and how we have experienced Afro-Latinidad, how we define it, how we actually want to talk about it. So there isn't a right or wrong. These are just, again, our stories of how we actually experience Afro-Latinidad. We're hoping that by sharing our stories and these stories that we have, that we actually allow for others to understand the identity a little bit more clearly. That in our stories, you get to hear some of both our pride, our joys, and our struggles. So that being said, it feels really important to first kind of lay some groundwork with everybody that's listening, and to just have everyone share, like, what is Afro-Latinidad in your definition and the way that you think about it and experience it? What does it mean to you, and what is this identity? So we'll start with 𝗖𝗍𝑐's first, and then you all just jump in as you want.
Let's see. To me, I think it's being able to be, a mixture of both, African and Latino, being able to identify as both. Like for my family, we're 𝗖𝗵𝗆𝗃𝗀𝗃, so we're able to identify as both. And I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of that, especially as you transition to the US. I've gotten to know that, and my family luckily educated me that in my, like as a youngin. And so I've been able to educate a lot of people as I've gotten older. So I think, to me, that's what Afro-Latinidad is, being able to identify as both.
And can you just share, 𝗖𝗍𝑐's, what is 𝗖𝗵𝗆𝗃? I mean, let's go on ahead and teach people right now too.
So 𝗖𝗵𝗆𝗃 originated in Belize. So it's, you can find 𝗖𝗵𝗆𝗃s in Honduras. Sorry, my dog is right here. Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, and Nicaragua as well. But there are, sorry, if not, he's going to keep whining. They are people that came from, they came from Africa as well, but they're people that, how do I explain it? It's a small group it's a small tribe who are still in Belize and have spread through Central America, and we're still around throughout Central America. So we have our own language and like our own dance, like punta, and what else? A little bit of everything. So yeah.
Thank you.
It's just a small tribe.
Mira, don't make me call on you. See, I'm gonna do the teacher thing. I'm gonna wait for y'all to jump in.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't want to be rude. That's my bad. For me, especially with me, just kind of like recently identifying as Afro-Latino, especially in the last couple of years, right? Because I always felt like in certain spaces I wasn't Black enough, and in other spaces I wasn't Hispanic enough or Latinx. And so for me, it kind of just to piggyback off of 𝗖𝗍𝑐 is that like it's just being the best of both worlds, right? Being able to identify as both without like explaining to someone that this is where my parents are from. This is why my name is this way. This is why I feel like it encompasses all of that. So we're not sitting here going to a whole description about our life story, which that's been my story, especially living out here in Los Angeles, California. Everyone's always like, Alfredo Chavez, like explain that to me. You look this way, but then you have this whole Hispanic Latinx name. And so I just think that's what like Afro-Latino means to me, to be able to not have to explain to people who I am and them know my identity just off of like hearing that.
Okay, for me, it's kind of different. It is different because I was born and raised in Colombia. So in Colombia, I'm Black, and Afro-Latina, I'm just Black and Afro. And when I came here, like, I had to start thinking, I had to start thinking about race and ethnicity. I'm Black, but also I'm Latina. So for me, it's more like a representation. I'm representing my Black people in Colombia, my Black people, and also I'm representing Colombia as in general.
What kinds of questions do you all get where like, because that feeling of like, I always feel like I got to explain to people who I am because it doesn't match, right? Like I used to always get the question, are you mixed? I don't know if they still ask that question nowadays, but like, are you mixed? Okay, let me go on ahead and go down the list of like all the ways that like we can answer this question. But like, can you all share a little bit about like, what comes up for you when you have to like defend yourself or explain yourself to people when they ask that question?
I would say that too. And Alfreda, I grew up in Hawthorne. And so growing up, I honestly, I mean, I remember when, and I was just telling someone about this. I remember like the check boxes, like I always checked off black because like, I like when you think about, I mean, I knew I wasn't white, and growing up, it was just black, white. And then I remember when multiracial came out, and then what else was the other boxes? Like taking tests when like, you know, it was just black, white, and then I think multiracial was next. I don't know if biracial was out at the time, but like I remember like when we were like tests, like I just always checked black because I knew obviously I was not white. But that was just what I like, you know, in Hawthorne growing up, I knew I wasn't a white woman. But that's just the way I grew up. But I knew I wasn't a mixed woman either. But my mom always did tell me like, well, Garifuna was. And I like saw pictures of my grandpa, like he was like darker complexion. And so my mom was quick to tell me like the difference between like race and ethnicity and like how it is different in other countries compared to how it is in the United States. And then even like how it is in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is different from like, I grew up in Indianapolis, shout out Indianapolis. And then even in Indianapolis, and not a lot of people know this, but when I grew up in Indianapolis for high school, like even the way that they did their busing system where I grew up in, it's called Hallville. Depending on like what street you lived on, like you could get bused to different schools. And so the school that I went to, which was a township school, which was I love my high school, that I got to go to, which is one of the nicer schools. They needed more African Americans in their school. And so the other schools, depending on what you identified as, so if you were like white, you got to go to like in that area, you got to go to this school. You identified as black, you got to go to this school. So I got to go to the better school because they needed, they needed more African Americans and more blacks. And so not a lot of people know that. And so I actually had to prove that, I was black. And I remember my mom, she's like, no, tu abuelo. Like I had to send it like I had pictures of my grandpa. And not a lot of people know this story. Mine is like my best friend Patrick and my mom and whoever else. But like it's crazy like that. Like I had to go through that in like 2006, 2007, like prove myself because I've not had to go to this not the best school that was around at the time. That but I remember this story like telling somebody about it recently. That like even like busing was around in like 2006, 2007 to me, like like demographics, in schooling. And now as a teacher, I still think about that stuff. That luckily I got to go to a really good high school.
For me, growing up, my dad was born and raised in Colón, Panama. My mom was African American. So my cousins would kind of refer to me as like their Spanish cousin, right? Like older, lighter skin. We know they got a different name. Cool. So I kind of like was like really mixed with like the identity. I was like, okay, cool. I know like we're Panamanian, but are we black too? Right. And then as I got older, it kind of stuck with me that I was like Panamanian first. And then when I went to college down south, which was in North Carolina, I went to an HBCU. Shout out to North Carolina A&T. I give you pride. That's when kind of like oh man, you not Spanish, right? Because that's like an East Coast thing. They call you Spanish. They don't say Hispanic. They don't say Latinx. It's always Spanish. And I'm like, all right, cool. You ain't Spanish. You're black. So now it was like this thing of like, okay, I'm just going to kind of drop the Panamanian thing. If somebody asks me, yeah, I'll have a conversation with them, but it's like really nothing. And then when I moved to LA, that's when like things like really changed, right? I went to this school called 𝗘𝗱𝘂𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗃 Academy, upper school, which is where my school leader, 𝗏𝗍𝗃𝗍𝗃, like kind of pushed us to learn our identities. But living out here, the predominant race is like, well, ethnicity is like Mexican, right? They do have a lot of Hispanic, Latinx, but it's like predominantly Mexican American or people born and raised in Mexico. So I would get into these lifts, into these Ubers, and they'll be like, Alfredo? Like, I'm like, yeah. Chavez? And I'm like, yeah. Father born, and I'm like looking at them like, I mean, first of all, you're an Uber Lyft driver. Like, let me just get my ride. Let me keep going, right? Like, right. But no, it was like, let me actually figure out where you're from. Half of the rides would be, oh, yeah, you look Dominican. And the other rides would be like, oh, you're Panamanian. Yeah, you're black, right? Like, you're not Spanish. Or, oh, do you speak Spanish? And if you don't, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, más o menos, right? Yo, poquito, right? So they're like, so I got into this mix of like questioning like my own identity because like I felt like I wasn't Hispanic enough. I didn't look the part here. But as I kind of like grew older and my school leader here really pushed us to figure out who we were, like that's when like the Afro-Latinx, Afro-Latino, Latina came up. Then I was able to like create this foundation of like, this is who I am. And anybody who questions it, like that's not going to like shake my ground for anything.
I relate a lot with all that you're saying, because for me, it's I mean, now it's funny, but the beginning was very annoying with the situation that the question, oh, there are Black people in Colombia? And like, oh my gosh, again, we're going to start this conversation again. Yes, there are Black people in Colombia, because I'm not the prototype of Colombian people that you see on television. So it happened with many people. Now, and also in my school, my students, the first time that they saw me, like, teacher, where are you from? Oh, is she from Colombia? Like, she speaks Spanish? Yes, I speak Spanish. I am from Colombia. And like, because they think that I'm from Cuba, I'm from Dominican Republic, or from any country in Africa, but not from Colombia, South America. Because it's like my skin is dark, and usually on television you see light skin people. So it's always like the question, are you from Colombia? Are you really do you speak Spanish? That's the question that I had to deal like a lot here.
Man, I blame Telemundo and Univision for fucking it up for all of us. That we have to like somehow defend, right? They're like, no, we're not all like light-skinned, blonde-headed, like, oh, that is not how all of us look. Like, thank you, Telemundo and Univision, for like fucking that up for all of us, right? Like, I feel like Encanto opened up this new world to people.
Yes.
It's like, oh,
listen, was in the movie theater watching that, like, yes. Yes. And like my students watching it, you know, and they see it and they're being able to see a different ethnic group that actually speaks Spanish. Because here, when I introduced, so we have, you know, Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month, right? We went into our identities, and some of us here who identify as being Hispanic or Latinx, I talked to them about Panama. So the first question was, what language do you think like Panamanians speak? I put English, I put Spanish, I put like 2 other languages. Spanish was never chosen.
Shut up.
Right? And then I was like, does anybody know where Panama is? Right? And it's like, they're like 5th and 6th graders. And I'm like, they're like, no. And I'm like, it's in Central America. And I showed them like how close it was to Mexico. And they're like, what? And I'm like, they speak Spanish. They're like, really? Like, your dad spoke Spanish. Do you speak Spanish? And I'm like, I speak a little bit. Like it was like breathtaking for them. Right. But it was like a new world opening up because they never knew these things or even thought. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, so let's go down that path, because that is always, I feel like that's a little bit of a struggle too, of like, how do we talk about this with our students? Because I know like my middle schoolers, I mean, most of them were Puerto Rican. There was a good mix. Let me take that back. Good mix of Mexican and Puerto Rican. with some Ecuadorians. And really that was about the gist of the group. But like, for whatever reason, like there was always this thing with some of my Puerto Rican students around like, yeah, but you're kind of dark, Miss Cortez. So does that make me not Puerto Rican? Like, let's all revisit real quick. And now let's do the history lesson. Thank God I was a social studies teacher. Cause like, I was like, Mama, we're about to learn how it is that we Puerto Ricans are Black. Like, let's just have this conversation right now. Cause I need to have y'all understand this better than what you clearly do. And y'all can't be leaving 8th grade, going to high school, thinking this stuff. Like, I will have to fail as a teacher if you do. So what is it like with kids to like have this conversation and try to work through, even like for them, right? Like the biggest issue I think for our people is like around colorism, right? And the way that shows up even in our students.
So I honestly have to teach them about the Atlantic slave trade, because I feel like they don't learn about it or they forget about it. Mm-hmm. And I have to go and show them how many slaves got dropped off where and go with numbers. And then they're like, oh, you're right. And then I showed them a few videos, like ESPN had a really good video with like different athletes that a lot of like MLB players, obviously, were like at first they had to identify as like Black athletes, but then later on they had to identify as Latino, like when they wanted to play. Because they didn't want Black players on their team. And so then like they had a really good video on that. And so I showed them like a few like different like videos on Afro-Latinx just in general. And so I like teach them about like the Atlantic slave trade, and just like there's a whole like worksheet that goes with it. And then just teach them about even like their favorite like artists or even like athletes, like Pop Smoke being Panamanian, and they're like, Pop Smoke was Panamanian, and R.I.P. Pop Smoke. Even like Carmelo Anthony, like being Puerto Rican, and like once you actually teach them about people that they like know and see on TV, and then they're like, oh, like young 𝗵𝗵𝘃, like people that like are relevant to them, then it actually like makes sense. And then they're like, oh, okay, like these people, like I know them, because a lot of people that they see, like they had no idea that, you know, are Afro-Latinx. It makes more sense to them, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you see, I'm like, look at what Maria be saying here.
Yes, Maria.
There it is, Maria.
Can I give a quick shout out? That's my like former school leader, like mentor. Who I was referring to, like,
yes, Mario.
Yeah, who pushed me and a bunch of our founders here at this school to just like learn our background, where we come from, our culture. So I'm super proud to see him tuning in. I love Mario. You already know. Got mad love.
Oh, Mario, mira, I can't even.
Yeah, you made me say Maria too.
Like he's in.
My bad, Mario.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little deeper. One thing about him is that he's big on pronunciation of names. Like one thing we do is like everybody writes their name on a name tag, and then literally you speak on how to pronounce it. And something I had to like deal with my whole life is like in America, it's always Alfredo, right? People put in like the A where an E sound is, and I'm like, wait, what? And I used to tell him like, yeah, like when I would hear him or certain educators pronounce my name, it sounded like my father's side of the family. And I didn't kind of really know what it really was. And then come to find out, like, you know, when you come to America or when you are here, you know, they pronounce your name the way they want to because it benefits and it's easier for them. So, yeah.
We talked about that last week where we said, like, I don't remember that name, where we said, like, I think you said Hennessy's, and she was like, is it Hennessy's? Yeah. And then like we're like, I always let people call me Jen or Genesis, but my mom calls me Hennessy's. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I let a lot of people just say Genesis when my mom, you know, clearly named me Hennessy's. But yeah, it's very true.
Oh yes.
That is
For me, I try to expose my students to like the culture and to show them videos about Black people in Colombia. It's hard to find videos with Black people in Colombia. It's super hard. It's super hard. And also I try like so with music, showing them like group musical group from Choco, where I'm from. Hey, people from Choco. Yeah, yeah, like Choco Town, people from the Pacific region, 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, those kind of music, so they can see Black people in that there are Black people in Colombia. That's what I'm trying to do with my students. I just expose them to my culture, to music, to different cultural things.
But it's hard, and that's what I'm hearing you say. Like finding the resources is like a for real thing at this point. And I think that was, I will never forget this moment when I was in college where like the professor who was teaching about Latinos in the United States, and like the entire curriculum was about Mexico. And I think like Puerto Rico got 1 week, and then like I think Cuba got 1 week, and then like they literally were like, everybody else gets another week. And I remember saying to her, like, this is about Latinos in the US, not about Mexican history. And she literally was like, well, look, Puerto Rico went on there because Puerto Rico doesn't have a history to tell. And so then you sit there and you're like, okay, so like this person who's supposed to be highly resourced, right, and helping us all learn, claims not to have the resources. Digging up that stuff, though, to prove her wrong. I ain't gonna lie, I was that kid. But to prove her wrong, that like there actually is a ton of stuff out there. It's just really hard to find.
Yes.
Like it exists, right? To your point, 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, around like there are athletes out there, there are artists out there that like most people, maybe if they saw them, they don't know, right? Like because the name doesn't resonate, or because people are using the English pronunciation of the name, and so they're like losing sight, right, of the possibility of them being of Latin American descent. And so like that issue around finding the stuff is what I think teachers like fall back on. Well, it's not there, so like, right. But what else could we be teaching? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alfredo.
I just want to piggyback off what you were saying.
Go for it.
You know, one, I want to clarify too, because I didn't want to make it seem like our school is just like students who identify as being Mexican, but like we have Salvadorians here as well too. So I want to make sure I say that we have different Hispanic Latinx cultures. It's just that the biggest one is Mexican. And just to piggyback off of what you were saying too, you know, there's not really much on Panama, right? So like when I'm telling my kids about those things about Panama, it's hard. Like you said, kids are visual. Most of them are visual learners. So like if they can't see it, they're like, I hear you telling me this about this country. I know you're saying it like they speak Spanish, but like Coach Chavez, I just really don't see it, you know? And something for me that I had to teach my kids is that one kid was like, hey, Coach Chavez, I played a song. It was like, you listen to reggaeton? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, do you know where reggaeton like originates from? They're like, Mexico. And I'm like, no. Try again. They're like, they said something else. I was like, no. It actually originates in Panama, right? That's where it actually started at. And it got really popular in Puerto Rico, right? But most people don't know that. And then I had to even go even deeper and say, do you know how reggaeton was created? It came from reggae, right? Blacks brought that, right, to Panama, and that came off of it. And so when they heard it, they were like, oh. And I'm like, y'all see all these like reggaeton artists, right, who, like you said, have very, very light skin, colored eyes, right, straight hair. And I'm like, dude, if you see these different reggaeton artists, right, that are out there who are dark skinned, who have big curly hair, right, and they don't get exposed to that because, like you said, you know, TV, the radio, music, they don't portray that, right? It's like if you're Black, you go to rap. If you're Hispanic or Latinx, you go to reggaeton, and that's it. There's no like in between. Yeah. There's so many of these different artists that, you know, need to be exposed and shown so people don't think reggaeton is just this like, when you look at someone, you say, oh, I didn't know you listened to that either. And it's like, like, nah, I play that too. Like, and I like to listen to it. So just wanted to piggyback off of that.
Yes. Because there is more, right? Like, So what else, I mean, y'all obviously are still in the classroom now. Like, what else could teachers be doing to really uplift this in their classroom so that there is more visibility? Because that's the issue, right? If you can't see us, then you don't know we're there. So like, see us, right? So what else could you offer as some suggestions or ideas for other educators in this space?
I think definitely just not focusing, not just focusing on us during this month for sure. Try to focus more like throughout the year. I mean, like even like in general, because I feel like even a lot of people just try to, you know, throw about the Afro-Latinx during this month. So try to sprinkle us in throughout the rest of the year, which I try to do too. Like teaching about, you know, different countries throughout the rest of the year. Because I try to do like culture days, like once a week. I try to teach about different like culture or countries or whatever it may be. Like it's just as a like whatever kind of educator you are, like in the Spanish classroom or whatever classroom you're in. I think that's important just so like your kids are more culturally aware. But I think that's just important just so, you know, make your kids more culturally responsive. I think that's very important. Because I'm in a very like interesting situation where like I know Alfredo was saying that he has a lot of students that are from like everywhere. I only have, I think in our school in general, we probably have less than 10 kids that are Spanish speaking in our entire school building. And we have probably more than like 500 students. And I probably have like 10 kids that speak Spanish. And I only teach 2 kids that speak Spanish. And one's Dominican and the other one is Mexican. And I utilize them as much as possible when it comes to, you know, like asking them questions or whatever it may be, like, you know, when it comes to like culture stuff. And the other 2, I taught them, you know, within the last 2 years. And I utilize them as much as possible as well when it came to, you know, whatever like unit we were, you know, discussing. But definitely utilize those kids as much as possible. Whether it's like, how do you say this in your country or like, whatever, because everything's different. Like arepas are different in Colombia than like they are in Venezuela or whatever it is. But I would say like when it comes to like Afro-Latinos, don't just focus on us in February. I think that's important. And utilize the resources, even if you're not like an Afro-Latino teacher. Like there's a good Facebook group for sure. And so yeah, like utilize your resources. Like there may be a teacher in your district that has good resources. Yeah, I would say that's my best bet.
To piggyback off of that, I think just us being who we are on an everyday basis, right? Like if someone says something different than what you identify as, like correcting them, like I am Afro-Latino, I am Afro-Latina, I am Afro-Latinx. I think also like just telling our story at any chance we get, especially to our kids. One thing about kids, like they'll listen to you. And the more you tell them, the more you teach them, they'll actually start having pride in your own identity themselves. One thing I realized for my kids, like the first year, they didn't really know. They were like, we don't really know Panama yet. We're getting to know it, right? And now that those 5th graders are 8th graders now, if someone else like says something to me that doesn't sit right with them, like, oh, he's just Black, or like, oh yeah, he doesn't speak Spanish, my student will step up and like correct them. That's because like I was able to like every year like teach them about like my culture, my identity, who I am, and stand tall on it. I actually went to Panama this past summer. I came and brought some of my students some stuff back, and they were super excited and proud for me. They were like, Coach, I'm so happy you went. Like, let's go. Like, you know, I know your dad would be really proud of you. And so in those moments, you know, those conversations, those circles, those, you know, little, you know, tiny, let me put you to the side. Let me talk to you about this really quick. Those all paid off because now they know what Afro-Latino or Latina is, and they're able to speak on it to other people. I think as educators, we play a huge role where if we teach kids something, they're able to teach someone else, and they're able to teach someone else. Because like we said before, we all agreed on, Afro-Latino is such a new term that some people still don't even know what it is. And I don't think it's for us to really get too angry at them about, right? I think it's just a moment for us to kind of educate them, right? Tell them about our experiences, things that have happened to us. Because when I tell people I got questioned by my identity, not only just kids, but adults be like, but why though? And I'm like, I don't know. Somebody, they just think I was just this. And so now they kind of have a sense of pride in like my actual ethnicity and identity. And if they hear someone else talking about it on the side, they're able to step up too.
I agree with that as well. My kids will definitely defend me.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I just the fact that when they see Genesis in the classroom, when they see Alfredo in the classroom, when they see me in the classroom, it's a good beginning. It's a good beginning, and we can pick up from there. And also like for the teachers that maybe they are not Black or Afro-Latino, they can find resources. As Noemi said, it's hard to find, but the resources are there. We need to dig deeper to find those resources and expose our students to Afro-Latino people. So that's I think it is a good beginning with us in the classroom, more representation. And as Genesis said, not celebrate this just 1 month. This should be all year. So
Right. And that's the truth of it all around at the end of the day, right? Like we can save it for February, but if we're going to save everything that ever has to do with anybody who is descended from Africa for 1 month, the shortest month of the year also, like we're actually just not actually helping our students to develop a broader understanding of Blackness, right? And that's, I think, the bigger question at this point is like, it is Latinidad is not a monolith, right? And neither is Blackness. It's not a monolith, right? Like there's a way in which we need to actually start to really think about that in the ways that are more true for where we live. And I think that is where, for me anyway, this idea of like the diaspora, I don't know how y'all feel about this, but like how we talk about the diaspora and the fact that we are talking about it now finally feels a little bit safer for my kids anyway. I have 2 little kids who are heading into a world where like now they get to identify that. Like now the world makes more sense to them. They can say they're Afro-Latinas and like they actually can do so with some pride because there are teachers like you all who are willing to talk about it. And that is like the first step in so much of this, because it's not limited to February. It's actually like, let's just talk about this because this is what's coming up in our country, in our world, right? In fucking Disney movies now, right? Like, let's just talk about it. And that feels like the first step. If there are teachers out there who don't know where to start, just start by talking about it, by asking the questions, by pulling out a map, right? Like that is, if nothing more, a beginning. I also would recommend, like, there are lots of books out there.
Very true.
I mean, I know there are some curriculums that people get handed and you feel like you're supposed to stick to that book. And there are others. I'm just offering, there are other books out there that you could potentially bring in with kids to use. And there are also lots of related stories to history. Don't get me started on like the possibilities in social studies classes. And also the ways you can connect it in math. Mira, it's all over the place. There are lots of ways that we can do it. So our encouragement to all you educators out there is just to dig a little bit deeper than just what you find on the first page of your Google search. So before we head out, we have a little bit of time. So want to end on a slightly different note. But for you all, what is the thing that you find the most joy when it comes to being an educator?
Oh, that's yeah, that's easy. Just seeing kids smile, bringing kids joy. Anytime I make a kid smile, help them accomplish something, I see them, finish a book, or they say, "Hey, Coach Chavez, I really appreciate you for being there." Just bringing them any type of joy or happiness makes my life 100 times better. I had two mentors growing up, Walter Larkins, Aubrey Sheffield, who were my track and field coaches. They went above and beyond, right? Like they brought colleges to our school when nobody wanted to come there to talk with us about scholarships. They literally took us out to dinner after track meets. They checked on us in college. They checked on us just in general overall. And so sometimes I'll be like, dang, why are they going above and beyond, right? Like we know they don't get paid a lot, right? And we know they're not doing it for the money. And they just wanted to see us succeed in life. And until this day, they still text me, call me, ask me if I need anything. So, that's what brings me to joy, being able to be that support system and being a child's corner and knowing that they always can depend on me, no matter what.
That's a good answer. I'm like, wow.
Hennessy's like, I don't want to go next now.
What an answer. Is your school hiring? No, I'm just joking. No, I'm kidding. I'm like, what a year. No, honestly, this has been quite the year, but honestly, what brings me joy? Sometimes, you have those days teaching where you have those little breakdowns, but I've had quite a few this year. But honestly, what brings me joy is when my seniors come in and bother me, they're like, Rosales. I'm like, here we go. But no, I love those kids. But one, when my seniors come and ask me for recommendations, because obviously they know that I would say good things because my little hearts do love them. And my current kids, definitely the ones that the ones that correct each other, especially when they're learning Spanish, and whether they're correcting each other, and even if they're they might slip up with a cuss word or something, and they'll correct each other, no, dang well it's supposed to be this, and they'll it's the cutest thing because it's obviously they're getting they're getting the language, and they'll compete against one another, and that's that brings joy to me because sometimes you're sitting there and you're like, why do I do this? But you're listening to them do their writing, and we're learning food right now, and this boy was obviously is me gusta, and I was like, fair enough. It's he was it's not me gusta, it's me gusta, and I was like, fair. And I was like, you're not supposed to be talking, but he was correcting him, and he understood the assignment, and that's what brings me joy is listening to the actually get it. So that's yeah, I would say that that's what brings me joy is listening to them just get it. Even when it makes me mad sometimes, and yeah, I would say that. Even on the bad days, listening to them actually butcher their Spanish.
For me, it brings me joy to see their smiles when I make jokes in the classroom. Also, how open and how willing they are to talk about not just content-related things, but personal things, to be able to share and be vulnerable with me as a teacher, as a person. that brings me joy. And also when they say, "Hey, teacher, you're making me speak Spanish more," that brings me joy because I know they are learning the language.
Well, I would say that what brought me joy was when my kids understood how to define systemic racism and oppression, and did so in front of the principal, and did so with pride. I was like, my job is done. Y'all can graduate now. So that's how I know I did some good in this world. But, well, you all, our time has come to a close in many ways. We still have a little bit of time, but I also just want to acknowledge that, like, y'all been teaching all day. And so I can imagine the levels of exhaustion that exist. So before we transition, first, I want to say thank you to all three of you. COVID has been a beast, and for you all to keep it moving and to keep doing what you're doing and to continue the efforts in spite of all the challenges. Truly, thank you for doing what you do. And I hope that you all feel the gratitude and the appreciation from the students and the families that y'all work with. And if you don't, then know that 𝗖𝗍 loves you. 𝗖𝗍 will send you love. That's always going to be here. So in those moments where you don't feel it and you're not sure about it, just hit Susana up. I'm gonna volunteer her right now and also just for all of you who are here watching, again, do remember that Afro-Latinos, we are real, we exist, we are here, and we are also in lots of other spaces. And so start to have the conversation. We hope that this kind of gave you some seeds to start with, to allow yourself to do more research and to also bring it into your schools and into your classrooms, so that, again, we no longer have to sit and defend ourselves or explain ourselves, but that, in fact, we have allies out there who are willing to actually support us in helping others understand that we are both, and that is actually allowed. So that said, any of you want to say anything before we head off and we transition over to Susana? It's your last chance.
Gracias.
Yes, thank you all for being here.
All right. Did you have something, Alfredo? Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were like.
I wanted to say thank you to y'all for having me on here, like to tell, my story, because again, it's something that needs to be told over and over. And the more spaces we create to have Afro-Latinos be there to speak out, the more people will know. So thank you all for reaching out to me. I had an amazing time being on here with 3 wonderful women educators who identify as being Afro-Latina as well. Like, I'm very humbled to be here. And also, I know he tells me not to do this. I'm going to do it. Huge shout out to my scooter, 𝗵𝗇𝗍𝗍, because I wouldn't be in this position and be who I am without him. So huge shout out to my former scooter who's putting in right now too.
Man, you see, I'm gonna shout out Mario too, playing games.
Yes, Mario,
right? Like build up our teachers playing games. All right, Mario. All right, thank you all so much, Susana. I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Oh, look, she's muted. Look, y'all.
I don't know if y'all seen me. There we go. I don't know if y'all see me, but like down here the whole time I was like, yeah. I was doing the snaps. I was like, go ahead. I was just the opportunity to learn from y'all. I mean, to take time to, tell your story, to educate us, because, we don't have to do that, right? And so I appreciate y'all for taking the time, especially like Noemi said, after a long day of teaching. We appreciate you. A couple of takeaways that I got is like, Black history does not only need to be taught in February. Afro-Latinos don't just need to be acknowledged in February. So if you are an educator, you heard it here. You heard some resources, you heard some strategies. And, like Noemi said, it's out there, right? Luckily, in the last 10, 15 years, there's more literature, more videos. But the more that we show it, the more it'll be there. Man, when Angie, when you said like, here we are, here's Alfredo, here's Hennessy's, here I am. I'm like, okay, you know, I got so hyped right there. I was like, yes. So the more that we show, you know, the visibility, the more that y'all will, you know, be visible, if that's what I want to say. Angie, Hennessy's, Alfredo, thank you so much. Noemi, I also appreciate you for bringing your story with you today and for moderating for us. If panelists, Noemi, if you want to stick around for a couple minutes, I know Ivan wants to take a picture of us, but for those of you who are with us this evening, I want to tell you about some things we have coming up. If you don't have these dates in your calendar yet, you need to get them there. We have a lot coming up in March. We have a lot happening in the coming weeks. Our virtual book club starts on March 1st. So if you're not signed up yet, it's right there, leckc.org/LEC Book Club. We are reading Textured Teaching with our amazing director of high impact practice, 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗃. Do not miss it. If you didn't hear yet, 2203 Lexington Avenue, KC Mo 64124. We have an office space and we have our open house coming up next Friday. So don't miss it. For those of y'all that are not in Kansas City, Hennessy's, Alfredo, Noemi, I'm gonna fly y'all out soon. Don't worry. I'll just talk to Edgar about that. Our virtual, it's too cold right now though, Alfredo. You don't want to come up here. Our virtual career fair is also coming up March 31st. And if you are waiting for Acción, the wait is over because it is coming on April 2nd. Lastly, we would really appreciate if you took some time to fill out our survey. It gives us as an organization to get better. It gives us an opportunity to get better and to make sure that what we do is for you, about you, by you. So this link, this QR code, I know you're probably watching on your phone or your iPad. Go ahead and scan that QR code. Tell us what we could do better, or give us some great feedback. You know, our panelists did an amazing job today. Our moderator, Noemi, did an amazing job. If you want to give them any shout outs, give any amazing words, feel free to take our survey. We would really very much appreciate it. And as always, you know, we crack on all the social medias. So follow us on social media. Thank you, Ivan, for all the work that you do to keep us lively on the socials. Again, Angie, Hennessy's, Noemi, Alfredo, thank you so much for your contribution and for telling your stories today. I learned a lot. And we will see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.